We're going to do a little recording. Do you mind?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, you mind?
No.
Okay.
No.
Welcome back to Mrs. B Reads. We are working on The Canyon's Edge by Dusty Bowling, and this is my period 7 class. Okay. We are really in the thick of things here. Carried Away, page 118 in the book. The short amount of direct sunlight has already burned my white shoulders. Now remember, she's in a slot canyon, so the sun passes overhead for just a little bit of time. So she only gets direct sunlight shining down there for maybe an hour or two, okay? Has already burned my white shoulders. I take some mud and slather it on my stinging skin, dab it under my eyes before moving on. Did you know you could use mud as sunscreen if you're ever stuck out in the wilds? Yes. Yes, you can. Elephants do it. Okay. Right. A lot of animals do it. Keeping track of the time is difficult when I can't see the sun. The line of sunlight along one canyon wall is now rising. 3 o'clock? 4 o'clock? Where is Dad? How can we not have found each other by now? I feel as if I've walked 100 miles. And then I see color ahead, coiled in an uprooted palo verde like a bright red snake. Uh-oh. As I near it, my heart leaps. I throw my hands up to my muddy face and laugh out loud before skipping the last few steps to the tree. The limbs scratch and slice, mar and mangle, injure and inflame my arms and legs. Its slender green branches snap and slash, lick and lash, whip and welt my face. Do you hear all of the alliteration here? Alliteration is when the first sound of words is repeated across words. Its thorny claws clasp and catch, tug and tear, rip and rend my long hair. I hardly feel any of it. All I feel is my heart pounding in excitement as I continue unraveling the rope from the tree that carried it away. It's probably taken me over an hour to get the rope free, my arms and reds now as layered in shades of red as the canyon walls. My arms and legs now as layered in shades of red as the canyon walls. What does that mean? What does that mean?
She's probably bleeding.
She's probably bleeding, scratched. Good job. My long strands of hair fluttering in the branches, my face stinging with scrapes. But I don't care. I couldn't leave it behind. This rope might mean so much to us. Patterns. What kind of poem is this? Just looking at it, you should be able to tell. What kind of poem is this? A what? You know, it is not a shape poem. What is it?
I just thought.
Oh, Lord.
I forgot how to pronounce it.
Help him out.
It's haiku.
It's a haiku. This is a haiku. 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. Apophenia. Apophenia. Trying to find a pattern when there isn't one. Searching. Now, this next chapter is partly in present day and partly in her head, thinking back to a conversation she had with Mary, her therapist, okay? You enjoy poetry, right, Eleanor? I like my mom's poetry. Have you heard of Gerard Manley Hopkins? No. Have you heard of Gerard Manley Hopkins?
No.
When an author mentions something in popular culture, it's called an allusion. Stop what you're doing and go and look it up because it's important. Authors put everything in their books on purpose. I'm going to show you guys information about this poet in just a bit, okay? So go look it up. He was a poet who would sit on a cliff and sketch sea waves, wave after wave after wave, to see whether one ever repeated. Why? He was searching for a pattern. He believed if he sketched the same wave twice, it would be proof. Proof of what? That there really was a God. Perhaps that's why we have such a need to find patterns, a reason for everything. Do you think you're searching for a pattern? Always. And so I watch the canyon walls as I walk, waves made of sand and stone instead of salt water. I look down at the ground at looser gray sand running in waves over the crackled light pink silt, looking for patterns in the waves of the ground, looking for patterns in the waves of the walls. I'm searching for repeats, reproductions, replicas. 3 synonyms right there. And I know if I find one, it will comfort me. It will mean this is all happening for a reason. This has all been designed by a designer. but my vision is blurry and my mind is fuzzy. I can't make out the details on the walls or ground, especially when the light in the canyon begins to dim. So it's heading towards nightfall again. Yikes. Drying. I fall back to the ground and push my fingers in, but the ground hardly gives. I pull the sharp shale from my pocket and plunge it into the earth, grasping the rock with both hands, trying to shovel the dirt out of the hardening soil. I remove my tank top again, scoop small mounds of damp dirt into it. Once more, I fold it up and squeeze it over my mouth, longing for another drizzle of dirty water. But all I get this time is drops. Oh my gosh, aren't you so parched just reading that? I need water. Still, hang on a second. I wish I could just hand this to Nora. Here you go, Nora. Still. I still haven't found Dad. Dad still hasn't found me. He must have been carried very far, but we have to be. We have to be much closer to finding each other. I cry out for him once more. Maybe he can hear me now. But all that comes back is the echo of my own voice. What if he's not coming? What if he's badly hurt? What if he's unconscious? What if he's... fill in the blank? Dead. Focusing on what ifs helps nothing, Eleanor. Protection. Searching around boulders and scanning canyon walls for any kind of inlet, I look for a place, a hidden place that will guard me from the night winds. Down here in the canyon, I am completely hidden, and yet it seems there's nowhere to hide. I finally find a large boulder with a good size outcropping. I bend down and peek under it, hoping it's big enough to tuck myself into its safety. It is, but my heart drops. My heart sinks. My head drops, my heart sinks. My shoulders slump. It's filled with thorny twigs and, more important, hola balls buried in the mud. Someone was already living under this rock before it got destroyed. A pack rat. Like the cactus wren, the pack rat uses the vicious spines of the hola to protect itself. I think of the cactus wren and her constant quick ah. Remember, we heard about this sound earlier in the book? The cactus wren making the sound like the turning over of an engine. Do you remember?
Yeah.
I think of her nest, supported by the arms of the hola. She uses pain as protection. I guess I can understand, but no human being could bear to sleep in a bed of hola. 1 calorie. I find another hidden place and peer inside. It's too small for me, but yes, thank you. I reach inside and pull out the mesquite beans, a couple slipping through my jittery fingers and falling to the canyon floor. I've stumbled upon an animal's hoard, something to eat to ease the cramping in my empty stomach. Now let's just stop and think about that. You guys know how squirrels gather acorns for the winter, and they hoard them, right? This would be like finding a squirrel's hoard of acorns. Would you eat that? It's food that's already been in an animal's mouth.
No. Well, if you really had
I know, if you really had to. We're talking about desperate survival here, right? Wow. I don't care how old they are. I don't care how dirty they are. I am starving. I shake the pods so I can hear the stone-hard seeds. Small and shaped like a sunflower's, they rattle like the snake, so I know the pods are ready to eat. I shove one slender bean in my mouth and bite down, snapping the pod in half, and then chewing, trying to get to the edible part of the pod, the pulp, the pith. As woody as a stick, sweet like syrup gone bad, sucking every calorie I can before spitting out the hard seeds and sawdust, which coats all of my sore tongue and sticks between every tooth. Spitting so much out that I wonder whether any is sinking into my stomach. 1 calorie, maybe 2, but 1 is better than none. I shove the few remaining pods in my pockets to save for later. Dimming. The sky continues to dim. Soon it will be dark again, and I still haven't found shelter. I still haven't found Dad. Then I hear the booms and freeze in fear. More storms, more water. I can't sleep on the canyon floor. Why can't she sleep on the canyon floor? What will happen?
she's gonna get
like if it's another flash flood, she could get swept away.
If it's another flash flood, she can get swept away, right? I pick up as much speed as I can, jogging and stumbling, panting and dizzy, trying to beat the fading light. It might happen again, sorry. Dad's face filled with terror. There won't be any moonlight. My body frozen in fear. I won't see the ground to run away, tremors beneath our feet. I won't see the walls to climb them, shuddering all around us. I will hear it roaring like a train. I will feel it trembling like an earthquake, but I won't see it coming, enormous wall of water. She's having like a PTSD flashback here, right? Anxiety. Flash, boom. My breathing speeds out of control as my anxiety rises as high as the towering walls of the canyon, growing grayer with every passing minute. Flash, boom. And then I stop, trying to catch my breath, throwing my head back, gasping for air. There. I see it. A place large enough for me in the canyon wall. Could something be living in there? I squint, focus my eyes, don't see anything but those white drips Dad pointed out. Those white drips, remember from before? What was that a sign of? What? Oh, come on. What was it a sign of?
Bats.
Bats. Would you crawl into a cave where there's bats?
No.
Bats. If any have tucked themselves in the corners, I'll scare them away. Flash, boom. What's the flashing and the booming? What do you think that is? Thunder and lightning. Nice job. But the fluttering in my stomach and heart doesn't stop. Flash, boom. Because this refuge is about 20 feet up. Free solo. Do you know what free solo climbing is? Do you know? There is a great show on the National Geographic Channel called Free Solo. I'm going to show you guys a clip of it in a minute, but if you don't know what that is, I want you to stop reading and go and look it up. Free solo. Eleanor, do you ever feel reckless? As the canyon walls cool and the distant booms become louder, the wind picks up and brushes my chilled arms. No, I'm very careful. I know now how easily I can die. I study the cave, spot a rock jutting out near the opening. I can tie the rope around to lower myself back down later. You don't ever feel like you're invincible? I remove my boots and socks, tying the bootlaces together and slinging them over my shoulder, the socks stuffed inside. She's going to do this barefoot, y'all.
How?
Not really. Sometimes it just feels like I don't care. So yeah, maybe that's reckless. I tie the rope in a loop and wear it across my chest like a cross-shoulder bag. You don't care about what? I've never climbed without rope, without rock shoes, without chalk, without a harness, without a belayer, standing at the bottom, taking up my slack and keeping me safe so I don't plummet to the earth. About me, about my life. This will be the first wall I've ever climbed with nothing but myself, with my hair in my face the whole way to the top. Sometimes I feel like I don't care at all, like none of it matters, like my life doesn't matter. I know I could die if I fall, but usually I'm very cautious. Break a leg and I'll be left to drown. I never really feel, but I don't think I'll live anyway if I stay down here one more night in between. So if she stays at the bottom, it's certain death. If she climbs up, she's risking death. Is it better to take the risk?
Yeah.
One more chapter? Terrified. I braid my tangled hair and hope it will stay back. I bend down and rub dirt between my hands since I have no chalk. Running my bare feet over the dirt, I scan the wall under the cave, looking for any cracks I can slip my fingers into. So she's going to literally try to claw her way up this wall. 20 feet, you guys. That's like 3 times the height of this ceiling. Could you do it? Barefoot?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No.
I don't know.
I mean,
Just a small crack will do. My hair is already breaking free of its braid. I work out the ascent in my mind, squinting in the deepening twilight, following a path from ground to the cave, slipping my fingers into a crack and finding a small foothold. I pull myself up. Good. One step at a time, Eleanor. I find another foothold and move one hand above the other in the crack. My parents lived for this when they were both living. Right now, more than ever, I wish I had Dad's skill, Mom's passion. They met on the face of a 1,000-foot tall cliff. They spent their honeymoon zip-lining over forests, rainforests. They rafted the white water of the Colorado River. They paraglided off mountains and into canyons. They strapped me to their backs when I was an infant and hiked the Grand Canyon. They taught me everything they knew about the desert, hoping I would one day love it as much as they did. My parents rappelled, climbed, hiked in this desert, and so I never wanted to disappoint them by telling them I'm terrified of heights. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks.